For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Motshabi Hoaeane. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner discusses how leaders earn respect by listening to communities and demonstrating integrity. With reference to the example of Nelson Mandela's leadership, you refer to the necessity of listening. Can you elaborate on that and how it relates to leadership integrity?
You know, you can't act on someone's behalf as a leader, and you can't act ethically or with integrity unless you know exactly what that problem is. And a lot of people have positioned themselves as experts on other people's problems. And I think before you can understand someone's problems, you have to listen. Now, when I was doing my research on Nelson Mandela, which I've not completed, one of the things that I hadn't paid enough attention to is that he listened. Now, I myself worked with Mandela, and it didn't strike me at the time, but I was reading about when he was a lawyer, and one of the things that Ruth Mompati remarks on, and she worked in the firm of Mandela and Tambo, is these people used to come there and he would listen very, very long. Now, the way lawyers tend to operate is they like to rush the client because they are listening and they're trying to think, okay, will this fit into an action in court? And if the client starts telling you about the whole history of the problem and this and that, you think, well, will this be relevant to, will the court want to hear this? Is it part of what is called the facts in issue? Now, it's very important for clients to listen, to have a sense that the lawyer is listening, but also in politics. Even if the answer you get from the leader is that, no, I can't help you with this, it's very important for people to believe that you have listened to what they say and that whatever you do has taken into consideration what they say. But also, if you listen properly, you may actually change your mind about what needs to be done. So either way, you have to listen if you want to be a leader who acts with integrity on behalf of others.
How do you understand the concept of people-driven and people-centered? Now, when the ANC was unbanned, many of us came from a background of populist struggle. In the 1980s, when the country had been made ungovernable, there were a series of initiatives to establish popular power. Committees, street committees, block committees, ward committees, people organizing on a local level to control crime, to ensure that there was not violence if there was a consumer boycott, that the community as a whole was consulted. And these experiences led many people to hope that the future democracy that unfolded would not only be periodic voting, but that people would be constantly involved. Now, when you negotiate, you don't negotiate informal democratic structures. Negotiations concern a constitution for legislature, for an executive, and for a judiciary. That didn't mean that the negotiations were opposed to popular power. The negotiations were concerned with institutions of government. However, it is my impression that people like Mandela and others believed leaders have to lead, government has to govern, and they can't go backwards and forwards to their constituency. But in the course of preparing for elections, they interacted with COSATU over the Reconstruction and Development Program, the RDP, and a formulation was developed which seemed to incorporate some of the sentiments from the popular power period, when they said
that future development and democracy had to be people-driven and people-centered. What it meant was that the people whose interests were to be served should inform development projects. They would know what they needed and where they needed it to be developed. In other words, if you were going to provide water to an area, people would have an idea as to where it should be placed. Because in some places, they had sacred rituals which at that stage were only conducted by men, and women were not able to go there. So if you put the water taps there, you would make it impossible for women to go there at that point in time. Also, it was important to consult with people to involve them in the project, because what happened in some areas is that they didn't involve local communities in the maintenance of these projects. So if the pipes got clogged through one or other reason, they hadn't trained people in the communities to run the maintenance, so that they had to wait for people to come from some other part of the province concerned to fix it up, and in the meantime the water or the electricity or whatever it was provided didn't function for them. So the idea of people-driven is that the planning, the idea should involve the communities. The notion of people-centered is that whatever you do should have in mind that the communities should benefit. Now, when you have a situation, for example, where you outsource provision of water to a commercial company doesn't regard provision of water as a constitutional right. It regards it as a commodity that needs to be sold at a profit. And consequently, the needs of the community is not a central concern in that situation. So the idea of people-centered was that the overall orientation of government should be towards providing a better life for all, and there's constitutional provisions that say basic needs must be provided.
That was Professor Raymond Suttner on proactive and engaging leadership for South Africa's democracy.